Hello, I'm Robert Lomas, and this is the 8th of 17 episodes of a work called 10 Nights in the Black Lion, which was written by the novelist Daniel Owen in 1859. It was originally written as a serial in a magazine called Charles Bala, which was produced by his friend Nathaniel Jones. This is the 8th episode, and it was published on July the 2nd, 1859. Episode 8. The Fourth Evening. It was the fourth night I had been in the bar-room of the Black Lion. The company were not many, and those that were there were not in a lively spirit. Everyone had heard of Mary Morgan's illness, which had followed so soon after the attack Simon Slade had inflicted upon her, and no one hesitated to connect one with the other. The child's visits had been so consistent and so tender, and her influence on her father so powerful, that most of the Black Lion regulars had sympathy for her, and for the cruel treatment she had received. The resulting outcome had greatly increased their concern. "Joe Morgan hasn't come in tonight," said one. "But he's not likely to for quite a while either," came the reply. "Why's that?" asked the first. "They say that the old man with the hot poker keeps coming to call on him." "Oh, people say that? That's scary. It must be the second or third time he's had such visitations, isn't it?" "Yes. He's quite likely to catch it badly this time. I wouldn't be at all surprised. That drunken so-and-so's an evil one. The world and his family would be much better off without him." "He's a drunken scamp," said Harvey Green, "and that's how it is. He's just in everyone's way. The sooner he goes, the better." The innkeeper didn't say a word. He was leaning on the bar, looking more serious than usual. "That's a very unlucky turn for you, Simon. They say the child is near death." "Who told you that?" said Simon, getting upset and throwing an angry look at the speaker. "Dr. Green?" "Nonsense. Dr. Green would never say any such thing." "He did." "Who heard it?" "I did." "Yeah, but he wasn't serious, was he?" The innkeeper looked concerned. "Yes, he was. They had a rough time with her last night." "Where?" "At the Morgan's house. Joe went crazy, and there was poor Mrs. Morgan alone with him and a sick child all night." "He deserves it, that's what I think," said Slade, trying to seem indifferent. "That's hard talk," said one of the company. "I don't care if he does go crazy, it's the truth. What else can he expect?" Slade said. "A man like Joe deserves pity," said another. "I'm sorry for his family," Slade said. "Especially little Mary," said one mockingly, and the bar-room echoed with scornful laughter. Slade got up and moved away from where they were standing, muttering that he couldn't understand what they meant. "Shut up, Simon. I heard serious talk in Phillips the solicitor's office this morning." Slade turned to look at the speaker. "If that child dies, you'll probably stand trial for manslaughter." "No, girl murder," said Harvey Green with a cold laugh. "I'm being serious," said the other. "Mr. Phillips said you could be charged." "It was an accident, and there's nothing all the lawyers in the world can do about that," Green enthused, taking the innkeeper's side. "It wasn't entirely an accident." "But he didn't try to hit the girl," Green said. "That doesn't matter. He threw the glass at her father's head. He intended to do harm. The law will not make any distinction about the person who received the harm. And another thing, who's willing to testify that he wasn't trying to hit the girl?" "Whoever says I intended to hit her is a damned liar," said the innkeeper with an oath. "If I throw a glass at your head, Simon," said the man calmly, "I don't think it is any good way to reason that I didn't intend to hit you. It may be the way some men decide a question when they are squeezed into a corner. But if we consider you, my friend, as an innkeeper, I'm sorry to say that your new business has not improved your morals or your temper. You're very different now from when you were a miller. You care nothing now about good behaviour or swearing or throwing glasses at people's heads. I fear you're learning your lessons from a very bad school." "I don't think you're entitled to insult a man in his own house," said Slade, adopting a more strident tone. "I didn't intend to insult you," said the other. "I just set out to explain the legal view of your situation, should you have to stand trial for manslaughter. And I meant it when I said no one can prove you weren't trying to hit the girl." "Well, I didn't want to hit the girl, and I don't think there's any man in the bar-room tonight thinking that," said Slade. "I don't think so, for sure," said the man he was arguing with. Nor do I, said everyone in turn. But I wish to demonstrate, the man added, that the case will not be so easily decided in a court when 12 men, all of whom will be strangers to you, sit in judgment on the deed. The slightest confusion in the events causes things to look so black as to leave you with very little chance. For my part, I think if the child dies, 10 to 1 you won't stay out of the county jail. I thought the man sounded brutal, and I couldn't decide if he was serious or just trying to intimidate Slade. He was certainly successful in that, as it was obvious that the innkeeper was frightened and taking his position very seriously. It looks black, sure enough, said one. Yes, it does. I wouldn't want to be in his shoes for a new coat, said another. For a coat? I wouldn't want all his clothes and the Black Lion thrown in with the deal, said a third. It's clear the charge will be manslaughter. What's the punishment? From 2 to 10 years in the jailhouse, the man answered precisely. Well, maybe Slade'll get 5. No, he'll get no more than 2. It'll be difficult to prove that he had evil intent. I don't know that. I've heard him yell and threaten the girl many times. Has anyone else heard him? Yes, yes, said almost everyone in the room. Then you'd better hang me now, then, said Slade, trying to make a joke of it. At that moment the door behind Slade opened, and I glimpsed his wife's worried face peering in. She said something to her husband. He seemed surprised and left the room. What's the matter now? The drinkers asked one another. I wouldn't be surprised if Mary Morgan is dead, said one. I heard her say the girl was dead, said another, who was standing near the door. What's the matter, Frank? Several asked as the innkeeper's son came into the room. Mary Morgan is dead, replied the boy. That's bad. That's bad, one sighed in earnest. A death is such a crime. Everyone in the room except Harvey Green whispered a few words of sympathy at the news of the bereavement. Now, friends, said one of the men, can't we do something for Mrs. Morgan? Can't we make a collection for her? Here's a start, one answered immediately. I'll give you 10 shillings right now for her, he said, pulling out the money and putting it on the table. And here's another 10 shillings for her, I said, putting my contribution alongside the first gift. And so the collection went smoothly until it reached £8. Who do we trust the money to? Was the next question. I suggest Mrs. Slade, I said. To the best of my knowledge, she's been to see Mrs. Morgan tonight. I know she feels great pity for her. Everyone was happy with the choice of Mrs. Slade to hand over the money. Frank was asked where his mother was, and he said she was in the next room. He went to fetch her. As she came into the bar, I noticed her eyes were red, and her face showed great distress. I just heard, said one of the drinkers, that Mary Morgan is dead. Yes, that's all too true, replied Mrs. Slade, obviously upset. I just came from the house. It was a bad thing that she has left this wicked world. It was a bad thing for her, one of the drinkers muttered. Well said, said Mrs. Slade, still sounding upset. My tenderest memory of her dying. Well said, said Mrs. Slade, still sounding upset. My tenderest memory of her dying was the love she showed for her unhappy father. It's a shame for her mother. It'll break her heart. Mary is the last of her children. Yes, the death of the child must be a torture for her, said Mrs. Slade. How so for her father? Well, Joe solemnly promised his child, in her last minutes, that he would never drink another drop of liquor. That was all Mary's doing. Once Joe vowed this, she died quietly, with her head on his bosom. Oh, gentlemen, it was the most touching thing I've ever seen. Everybody seemed very upset. The family are very poor and pitiful, continued Mrs. Slade. We've just made a collection. Here's the money, Mrs. Slade, £8. We trust it to your hand. Do with it as you see best for Mrs. Morgan's well-being, the man said. Oh, gentlemen, I thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of Mrs. Morgan for this generous, kind gesture. To you the sacrifice is small, but for her it will be a great benefit. Her husband will turn over a new sheet, and this timely help will be something to help them until he makes a better life than he currently has. Oh, gentlemen, can I also ask you to make an effort to help Joe Morgan? If he tries to keep the promise of his dying child and to reform his life, let the principles that caused you to do this act of mercy also make you watch over him. If you see him make an error, then lead him to the right path. You can do more than just not encourage him to drink. Take the glass from his hand and exert all your influence to get him to leave this place of temptation." Mrs. Slade stopped speaking and looked around the silent room. "Please forgive my forwardness in saying so much," Mrs. Slade added, looking intensely embarrassed. "But I am driven by my feelings." She picked up the silver from the table and started towards the door. "You spoke well," the drinker said, "and we thank you for reminding us of our duty." "Forgive me for saying one more thing," said Mrs. Slade in a hushed voice. "We made every effort to rescue Joe Morgan, and I know none of you want to walk down the path which Joe walked. Try and help the poor man." Mrs. Slade slipped out of the room and shut the door behind her to a stunned silence. "I don't know what her husband will say about that," said one after another. "I don't care what he says, I'll tell you what I say," said one, who I recognise as being fond of his glass. "The old lady has given us good advice, and I for one will take it. I want to try to save Joe, and to save myself too. I've walked the path she referred to, and now I'm ready for a turn. And so are you all. If Simon Slade does receive no more of my sixpences, you can thank his wife for that. God bless her." The man tipped his hat over his eyes with a jerk and left the room. This was a signal for the company to break up. Everyone retreated to his own home. Soon the door of the bar-room was closed and silence reigned over the house. I didn't see Slade again that night. Early the next morning I left Cedarville. The publican seemed out of sorts when he wished me a safe journey. That's the end of the 8th episode of 10 Nights in the Black Lion, written by Daniel Owen. It was first published in the magazine Charles Bala on July the 2nd, 1895. I'm Robert Lomas, and I spent the last year translating this. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please click the subscribe box in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen.